So it is 8:01, so we will get started this evening. So first, just want to say hello to everyone joining us. Um, just as a housekeeping issue, please make sure just to keep your video off if you are not one of the panelists, or Brandon or I just helps force all of the tiles up to the top of the video participants. I guess to start, I'll introduce myself. My name is Matt D'Alessandro. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the events and fundraising director for Bloom. And I'm going to be one of the moderators for this evening.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Brandon Graziani. I use he, him pronouns as well. And I'm also one of the events fundraising coordinators for Bloom. And yeah, so thank you for everyone for being here, and I'll pass it back to Matt.
Great. So I'm so glad that everyone could join us today in this virtual setting, and I want to thank you all for being here. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. As I am in Kingston this evening, I acknowledge that I am on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. I encourage you all to take some time to reflect on the land that you may be joining us from, and to learn more through resources available within your community.
We would like to acknowledge that this event is also being recorded. So thank you for keeping your cameras off, and we will post it to our website at the conclusion of the event. The panel are, so the breakdown of the event is going to be panelist discussion and specific questions, then followed by a Q&A by you, the audience. So that the only part of the event that's going to be recorded is that general discussion and the Q&A part. So no non-video participants won't be recorded, so there's no worries about that. And so with that said, I'd like to introduce Emily, the chair and founder of Bloom, who's going to speak a little bit about our mission and who we are as Bloom.
Thank you, Matt and Brandon. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm the chair and founder of Bloom. I just wanted to introduce to all of you what Bloom is and what our goals are for this year. So Bloom is an initiative run through Queen's University that strives to increase mental health literacy among youth within our communities. Our team is composed of 11 extremely passionate mental health advocates who, if you want to turn your cameras on, you can just give a wave. Oh, there they are. Our executive team, yeah. And our executive members assist in running mental health workshops within local elementary schools and create events such as this panel tonight to provide outreach within the greater community. We are also very excited to be officially launching our blog this week, where we will be highlighting various resources that parents and teachers can use in order to navigate their children's mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, I would just like to thank our entire Bloom team for making this event possible, and to all of our panelists and attendees for joining us tonight. If you have any questions or concerns throughout the night, please feel free to send me a direct message.
Thank you, Emily. So tonight we are happy to be joined by our four incredible panelists who all do various work in the mental health field. We would really like to thank them for taking the time out of their night to be here tonight with us. We would also like to give you a thank you to those who have donated to tonight's event. We appreciate it greatly. And then, so again, I'm just gonna give a breakdown of how tonight's gonna run. It's divided into two parts, a pre-selected question period, which is composed of general questions and specific questions for our panelists. And then that will be followed by our Q&A from the audience. As an audience member, you're gonna be able to have the opportunity to submit your questions to Matt and myself via chat. And then when the time comes, we're gonna compile them together. We will send them to our panelists and they will answer them one at a time. And then the questions that we don't get to, we're gonna send out an email to the people who ask those questions individually prior or after the event, okay?
Great. And in addition, we want to remind our audience that the topics that we do discuss this evening are sensitive topics for many people. People may choose to share personal stories. We ask that you not speak about others' personal experiences when chatting about this event. And finally, we want to thank our entire events and outreach team, Jack, Sammy, Maddie, Shannon, and Lo, for all of their work in making this event happen. And then before we begin, if this runs as smoothly as I planned it, we're going to run a quick poll just to get a gauge on the audience joining us today. So we'll probably give that 30 seconds. And if you could just answer there. 3, 2, 1. We'll end that there. So just to share those results with everyone, looks like the majority are students. Coming in close second is the parents, then educators, teachers, and other, which is really exciting. So thank you all for joining tonight.
Okay, so now we're gonna give the floor to our panelists who are gonna introduce themselves. And so first we'll start off with Dr. Diana Swift.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm so pleased to be here. So thank you very much, Bloom, for inviting me. I'm Dr. Deanna Swift. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a school and child clinical psychologist and a very proud Queen alumni from Arts 1990, where I started my psychology career once upon a time. For the past 15 years, I've worked at the school board as a mental health lead and overseeing professional services at the board. And I've just recently started a brand new job as an implementation coach with School Mental Health Ontario. So happy to be here and thank you for welcoming me.
All right, Anna, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Anna. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. And first and foremost, I think I'm a parent myself. And also I have been working as a dietitian for the past 20 years and have been working with individuals, adults and kids and teenagers and young adults who have been struggling with eating disorders. And I've realized that I understood that mental health is really important in this population and for the families around those who are struggling with eating disorders. So I decided to actually go back to school, and I'm currently enrolled in MSW program, so Masters of Social Work. So I'm a student myself as well. So I'm a dietitian, I'm a student, I'm a parent, and I'm future social worker. So I want to welcome everyone, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Anna. Laura, if you want to go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Comboy. I am the mental health lead with the Limestone District School Board. My preferred pronouns are she and her, and I just wanted to thank the whole Bloom team for inviting me to participate tonight. I'm very much looking forward to sharing some information and engaging in conversation. My role within the school board is to support the development and implementation of our board mental health strategy, which primarily focuses on supporting student mental health and well-being. I'm also a registered social worker, and for the last 8 years, I have worked in various departments at Kingston General Hospital, most recently in the emergency department, completing urgent mental health assessments.
And thank you, Laura. Melanie, if you want to be the last one to take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mel, and my preferred pronouns are she, her. Thank you so much to Bloom for having me on today. I'm so excited to be here. A little bit about me. I'm also a Queen's grad of the Concurrent Education Program with a specialization in at-risk youth. And I'm now doing my Master's of Social Work at the University of Toronto. And I'm working for Kids Help Phone as a texting coach. So as a texting coach, I'm training our volunteer crisis responders for our crisis text line that offers free support to youth across Canada.
Wide variety of panelists there. Brandon, do you want to start off the question period?
Yeah, so to begin the question period now, we're going to start off with our first general question. And so the question is, as a parent, teacher, or guardian, how can I myself monitor my child or students' mental health? What are positive and healthy behavior, and what is concerning behavior? So to begin, we're going to ask the same order again. If Dr. Diana Swift, if you would like to start, please go ahead.
Thank you, Brandon. I thought I should start with just talking about mental health in general and recognizing that it's a state of both emotional and psychological well-being. And it's reflected in a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So those are the things you're going to notice with the teens and children around you. And when a child or teenager has optimal mental health, they're resilient. We can describe them as resilient and being able to handle life's upsets, their stressors, the ups and downs, and they can also enjoy and celebrate all the great activities and find the joy in the things that are happening around them. When they have optimal mental health, they'll also have a really good sense of themselves. They can build strong relationships, and they're productive and contributing members to their family, to their classrooms, to the teams they join, and to their community around them. So that sort of sets the stage of when we're optimal and feeling good about our mental health. An important way to think about monitoring it is really connecting with your child and your teen. Spending time with them is the best way to monitor their mental health. So get active together, play together, spend time in nature, spend time listening and talking. All children and teens are going to have bad days. They're going to have stressful days when their emotions and behaviors are impacted. So really important to be just connected to them and listening and spending that time so you can watch and listen and wonder how they're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Diana Swift. If we can go to Anna now, if you would like to share your thoughts, please.
Oh, it looks like Anna might have been booted out. So we'll move on to Laura for the time being. Hopefully Anna can join us back on the call.
Sounds good. So when I was thinking about this question, I think for me, what really stuck out was just the importance of reminding parents and for the educators that are participating tonight that you don't have to be a mental health expert in order to support your child. And I think that's really, really important. You don't need to be a professional. You don't need to be a counselor. But like Deanna was saying, that importance of connection is so, so critical. And so just sitting down and engaging with your child to see how they're doing is something that is really important, and being curious when they're talking to you. So asking those why questions, wondering about what is going on with them, I think is so important. And for the educators in the group, some of the best information that you're going to be able to gather is those observations that you're seeing every day from the students in your classroom. So making sure that you are recording your observations, you're thinking about when these behaviors are occurring, how long they're occurring, and whether they're really impacting a student's ability to focus socially within the school setting, academically, and how it's impacting them. And then I think the other thing that's really important to remember, especially during the pandemic, is that everybody is affected in different ways. But for our kids especially, it's normal, right, to have some pretty strong emotions and reactions to some of the things that they've experienced over the last little while. And so normalizing some of those feelings and emotions is really important, but also having your eyes on and your ears to the ground and noticing when you may see some changes in behavior. So I think, a lot of parents probably observed that maybe there were some changes in their child's sleeping patterns, maybe the amount of screen time, their interactions with peers and families, perhaps worrying about their health or the health and safety of their loved ones and friends. And all of those things are pretty normal during a global pandemic. When they become problematic is when you start to see your kids withdrawing perhaps from friends or family, things that they really loved to do. Those sleeping patterns have now started to be disrupted for weeks. They're complaining about stomach aches or headaches. And when those kinds of things start to happen, that's maybe a sign that things are getting a little bit more serious. And you might want to contact one of your supports at school, a family doctor, or just somebody that is perhaps a little more knowledgeable that could give you some guidance and direction.
Thank you, Laura, for your thoughts on that and for educating us. Melanie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Brandon. And I think that's a great question. And what's important to remember is that this is new territory for all of us. Think of how you felt. Was there financial stress, job stress, relationship stress? All of these emotions are brought up as we learn to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is also the case for young people. Their routines have changed, their relationships have changed or are non-existent. And the things they used to enjoy may not be possible now. And they may have missed major milestones like graduation or birthday. So there's a lot going on, and the first step is letting them know they aren't alone, and that as a parent, teacher, or guardian, you may also be feeling the same emotions. In terms of your children, I'd recommend taking a note of your child's behavior. Have they stopped engaging in things they used to enjoy, or are they spending more time alone than before? And if you do notice this, check in with them and say something like, I know there's a lot going on in the world, and I just want you to know I'm here to talk. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, you can also reach out to Kids Help Phone, for example. And I would also suggest not doing this face to face. So it could be in the car or as you're cooking dinner. And if you don't get a reply, I wouldn't challenge them. Oftentimes they'll come back to you in an hour or a few days or even a few weeks. The point is you've let them know that you're here for them and there are places they can go for support.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for that insight. I'll really appreciate that. So it looks like Anna is having some Wi-Fi issues. So when she rejoins, maybe we can go back to her on that question. But I think we'll move into the specific question period directed at specific panelists. And the first one's for you, Mel. Working with Kids Help Phone, how are the young people dealing with the COVID-19 lockdown? What are some tips to help them navigate and manage their stress or anxiety? What is the best language to use when addressing mental health with my child?
Absolutely. So compared to this time last year, Kids Help Phone service demand is actually up by 112%, which is a lot. And we've seen that issues such as grief, eating and body image, isolation, and anxiety and stress have increased more during the pandemic than ever before. And Kids Help Phone's website actually has a few great tools to support your young people during this time. So one thing I can think of is called the Worry Rocket. So simply your young person writes what their worries are, and then a rocket shoots them away. Another thing is connecting with your young person on what they're interested in, whether that's painting or playing an instrument or cooking. Those can be ways to support them when they're feeling anxious or stressed. So finally, by letting them know that they have your support and that it's okay to be open about how both you and your young person are feeling, this will promote that positive help and seeking behavior where they feel comfortable reaching out to you or someone they trust with what's on their mind.
All right, great, thank you. We'll next move into our question for Deanna. So as a school mental health Ontario implementation coach, what are ways you implement resources and support to students within the school board? Do the students feel comfortable using these resources? If so, why are these resources effective? And why do you think students are able to refer to them for help?
Thanks, Matt. So as a school mental health Ontario implementation coach, my job is to support school boards across Ontario with systematically implementing evidence-based practices in schools across Ontario to both promote mental health for students, to prevent significant mental health onset of problems, and also to provide some early intervention practices in schools. So Mental Health Ontario is an organization that helps the boards implement these effective practices. There's a real focus on creating a mentally healthy classroom and resources to support educators, teachers, school leaders, and principals. There is an emphasis on mental health training for both teachers and professional school mental health professionals within the school board. We establish school services for early intervention. So we really want to look at what services we have available in schools. I know Laura will talk a little bit more about that in terms of her experience at her school board and what's available to support students in school. And as well, we're really interested in school boards creating pathways internally for support, but making those connections with community partners as well, so that we can refer our students on to more intense mental health treatment if they need it. So every school board in Ontario has a mental health lead, like Laura is at Limestone. And the job of the mental health leader is to create both a mental health strategy for the board and an action plan for the year to make sure that we're developing resources in all those areas of knowledge, of resources, of training, and pathways to help students. So my job is to just really help and support and coach the mental health leads and the boards and bring expertise and connect the collaboration among school boards and among leaders across the province. School Mental Health Ontario has a plethora of resources, so we want to make sure they're getting into the hands of teachers and schools and hitting the ground, and we're seeing the action in classrooms to support students. One of the groups we have within School Mental Health Ontario is called Thrive, and it's a student group. So it's made up of a diverse group of secondary students who have input to co-creating resources for students, which is so, so important. So that provides a youth lens, a youth voice. Students have input in terms of how they think that other students will respond to the resources, what they look like, what kind of medium we provide them in, whether it's over social media or print resources or video. So students have a really active voice in terms of some of the resources that we're creating for schools across the province. So it's really our hope that students creating resources for other students will really help the uptake and will help the students in schools feel like the resources are meant for them, if that makes sense. So we know they've been effective. We know that students are using the resources. It's helping guide some of the youth action that's happening in schools. They're able to take some of those resources and support their peers with them. And as well, it's really helping open up the dialogue. So there's certain resources that are created that teachers can use in the classroom and directed right for students to help promote their self-care, help promote their well-being, help them learn different activities about stress reduction, about managing anxiety. And they've been created for youth so that they'll speak to the youth that they're using them with, which is fantastic. There's a couple of really good examples of youth resources that were developed by Thrive and School Mental Health Ontario. And one's called No Problem, Too Big or Too Small. And it really talks about whatever you're worried about, what you're concerned about. It's not insignificant. It's important to talk about it. It's important to think about how we take care of our mental health and reach out and talk to others. There's another resource that the students created called Reaching Out, and how to talk about a mental health problem. Who do I go to? What can I say if I'm worried about that? So it gives them some direct language, some direct strategies to not only help themselves, but also help their peers. So these two really great resources we've created and are available for school boards to use, or available on the School Mental Health website. They're also available with jack.org. There's a COVID resource hub that was created between the Kids Help Phone, jack.org, and School Mental Health Ontario to put all the student resources in one place so students can access them in a really easy way. So we've created those links for your audience, and I know that Bloom has put together a resource page so you can check them out more intensely after this event, because we want you to be able to go and find them and take a look at these great resources that are available for students.
Thank you, Deanna. That was very great of you. You had a lot of information there with resources and different tips for all of us. I just wanted to let everyone else know that you can continue to send questions into Matt. He will be recording them and we will answer them at the end in the Q&A question portion of the event. And so I noticed Anna came back. Anna, if you can hear me, we're going to go back to the first question and hear your thoughts on it. Okay, perfect. So she is back. And so the first question, I'll repeat it again for everyone, is as a parent, teacher, or guardian, how can I myself monitor my child's or student's mental health? What are positive and healthy behavior, and what is concerning behavior?
So I'll put it in the lens of a dietitian, probably. And to answer this question is, for me as a parent, for me as a dietitian, I really want to know if the child or kid or a young adult is eating, he or she is able to eat at home, is how is he doing at school, how's he doing with friends, in a way that, is he hiding food, is he able to manage emotions without going into food and hiding food and not eating food. So this is what I'm, as a dietitian, as a parent, I would look for and assign if the child or student of yours is trying to avoid eating, trying to avoid food, trying to not talk about it. So that will be a sign for me, probably, that something is going on, and maybe this student or this child or young adult is not handling the situation well, and maybe needs help at this moment. And maybe what I would do is probably come and talk to this individual and open a conversation, open the door into exploring and being curious what's going on in life of this student or your child or young adult.
All right, great. Thank you, Anna. Very interesting to kind of get it from the perspective of a dietitian. So your insight there's much appreciated. Did you want to go back to the specific question directed at Laura, Brendan?
Okay, yeah. So for Laura, as a mental health lead for Limestone District School Board, how do you ensure that schools take the necessary steps to help their students maintain their mental health? And during the pandemic, what has changed with your approach on providing students with the proper resources to cope with stress and anxiety developed from online school and learning?
Thank you. That's a great question. Before I get into the details, what I do want to say is that at Limestone, I have an incredible team of people that work in the area of mental health and well-being. And so I will speak very specifically about my role in ensuring that schools take the necessary steps to support students. But we have a whole team of student support counselors, adolescent care workers, social workers, clinical consultants. We have some amazing EAs and behavior specialists. We have a wonderful superintendent, and we have a whole mental health leadership committee within Limestone that's comprised of various staff and some of our community partners. And so it really is a very collective effort within the community to support student mental health and well-being. So it is not my work alone, although I will get a little bit more into the specifics of what my role as mental health lead is and how we go about supporting students. So Deanna gave you a really great succinct background. Thank you, Deanna, which is wonderful. And we do work very, very closely with School Mental Health Assist. It is with the support of implementation coaches and the amazing resources that are developed through School Mental Health that we are able to do some of the fantastic work that we do across boards. So every board in Ontario has a comprehensive mental health and well-being strategy. And those strategies are really focused on promoting mental health, identifying issues early on, reducing stigma, and providing pathways to support for students, both within the school board and within the community. So Limestone, like many other boards in Ontario, in fact, I think probably all other boards in Ontario, provide programs, they provide practices, and we provide mental health services within a tiered model of support. And so as a mental health lead, I work very closely with school administrators to build capacity, to enhance mental health awareness and mental health literacy, and to really help them be able to build capacity in the schools that they work in and with the staff that they work with, to ensure that all of our students and families feel welcomed and included when they walk into a building or a classroom, that individual student learning profiles are understood by teachers, that there is explicit instruction in the area of social emotional well-being, and that there are opportunities for ongoing dialogue around students' mental health, parent mental health, and that we really work hard to reduce the stigma around mental illness. We also have staff that have specialized training in the area of mental health, And so those would be our folks like our student support counselors and our adolescent care workers, our social workers, our clinical consultants. I forgot to mention our attendance counselors earlier, who also support lots of students and families who are struggling with mental health issues. And they all engage in lots of different types of professional learning in order to best be able to support those students who we know are struggling and need a little bit more support. So they really help to build protective factors around well-being for students. They would support students who are at risk and might offer support in the area of something like counseling. And then for our students who are really, really struggling and we know that they need additional support outside of what the school environment can offer, we partner very closely with a lot of our community partners in the KFL&A area to support our most vulnerable and our most at-risk students. So I work very closely with our partners at both KGH and Hotel Dieu hospitals, with our mental health and addictions nurses through the Southeast LHIN, through our local children's mental health agencies like the Maltby Center and Addiction and Mental Health Services. We have wonderful supportive partners through KFA Public Health. And we all work really, really closely so that we can intervene if and when it is necessary for those students who are exhibiting some really significant mental health issues. Limestone also has really clearly identified pathways to care for students. And those pathways are outlined and available for all of the staff within our board so that any staff person at any time is aware of how to support a student who may present to them in a mental health crisis. And so part of my role as the mental health lead is to ensure that those pathways are clear, that people understand how to access them, that everybody understands their role within the pathway, and that we follow those pathways as closely as possible. Because we know when we do all of that, students and families then are able to access the services that they need when they need them, and we're able to intervene a lot more quickly. And for some of our students, that makes a tremendous difference. In terms of what has changed during the pandemic, so much has changed and so much has stayed the same. And I think that is one piece of the message that I really want to reinforce for our students in Limestone, for our parents that are watching tonight that have a student in Limestone. We are working very, very hard to make sure that all students have access to the mental health and well-being supports that they need. So when I was speaking a little bit earlier, I had mentioned, I think that, again, it is important to remember that the pandemic has affected each of us individually. And that's true for students and it's true for parents. It's really hard to compare one person's experience to the next because there are so many different factors for each person and for each family. And so for some of our students, engaging in remote learning was actually a really great thing. Like, they really liked it, and that pressure of having to get up and go to school and managing some of those things that made them really, really anxious went away. And we saw some of our students really thrive. But we know that there are other students who perhaps never really felt a lot of stress and anxiety around school before, and suddenly they found themselves in a really different boat. And managing that remote learning and some of the pressures that come with that were really difficult. So I don't know that I would say that there are proper resources to cope with stress and anxiety, but again, we have worked really hard to make sure that we are providing supports that will benefit all of our students. And so some of those supports are things that Deanna had mentioned when she was chatting. We have made updates to our mental health and wellness pages, and those links will be available to you so that you can easily access them. We've created really short online videos targeted at parents and caregivers around managing anxiety, sleep hygiene, building resilience, and supporting your child's transition back to face-to-face learning. And we are also continuously working on plans on how we can support our virtual schools and our students who are engaged in virtual learning. And within Limestone, we're working on a plan to ensure that all of our virtual learners will have the access that they need to that Tier 2 mental health support. So making sure that they have access to counseling if they need it. We are also using lots of different avenues on social media. So we have a wellness Twitter account, we have a wellness Instagram account, and we are trying to keep up with all things social media and making sure that we are promoting different coping skills, different messages around resiliency and gratitude, and just really trying to make that a positive space with some tangible things that students and parents can engage in for their own mental health and well-being. And then also during the pandemic, we were in the midst of a really great partnership actually with our the Queen's Clinical Psychology Outreach Program. And they were doing some work within some of our high schools, which I also had to pivot very, very quickly with COVID. And so they produced some really wonderful materials that are available on our board website. Again, that targeted what is good for all students around healthy communication, healthy habits, and managing some of the stress that comes along with the pandemic. So we have now moved out of emergency remote learning, and we have students who are engaging face-to-face, and we have students who are engaging virtually. And so we just want to make sure that all of our students have equitable access to the supports that they need. And so the same virtual services that were offered in emergency remote learning are offered to students this year as well. Virtual services or well-being supports within schools could look like a practice that happens every day within a classroom or on a Google Classroom. It might look like a phone call from a student support counselor or an adolescent care worker to check in and connect with a student and see how they're doing. It may look like a virtual counseling appointment with a registered health professional over a computer. And so we will continue to offer those supports and services to students who need them in a really timely manner. We've worked very closely with our privacy officer and with our wonderful IT team to make sure that when we're offering these kinds of remote services, that they're respecting student confidentiality, that we have safety mechanisms in place for students, and again, that all of our students are able to access the support when they need it.
Thank you. That was awesome, Laura. Really great insight, and it's really good to hear and see that you have so many resources, services, and great people within the Limestone District School Board helping the students out. So thank you for being a part of the school board. Thanks. And as Laura and Deanna both mentioned, following the event, Bloom will send out an email containing all the resources that are mentioned through a resource guide pamphlet. And so, yeah, you will receive an email after the event. And so now we're gonna move back to Anna for her specific question. And so the question is, as a registered dietitian, what are the obvious signs of an eating disorder? What are the hidden signs of an eating disorder? And how can a parent have a conversation with their child about their eating habits without overstepping or saying the wrong thing?
Thank you. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to try and make it up within my time frame. I want to thank you everyone for posing this question. I'm very impressed that many of you are actually interested in learning about eating disorders. Just a little bit about it, that during the pandemic, actually eating disorders have increased by 100%. The research has just come out in the past month, and we know that eating disorders are even more on the rise now than it was before the COVID started. So we know that our kids are suffering, and we need to know what to look out for and what we need to do. In a way, if we look at eating disorders, it's all about food, and it's actually not about food at all. It's about how our kids are able to manage their emotions and their anxieties. If we can think about it in a way that it's an illness, a disorder that kids are struggling or young adults are struggling with, more about the emotions rather than the food. And the causes of eating disorders are very complex. It's interaction between the genetics, biological causes, behavioral, psychological, and social factors. And sometimes we say that it's the gene that loads the gun and the environment that pulls the trigger. So I want to make sure that everybody can kind of grasp the idea that there's no one to blame for anyone for a child to develop an eating disorder. So I know that parents sometimes may be very stressed and take the blame for themselves, that they kind of put it on their child for developing an eating disorder. So I just want to make sure that as a student, as a parent, as a teacher, that we understand that it's multifactorial. There's not one single factor for developing an eating disorder. So to answer your posed questions, what are the obvious signs of an eating disorder? Just because of the time, I'm not gonna focus on that specifically for a long time. The obvious signs are the preoccupation, focus on too much on weight, body shape, and food. Interesting thing that we know that kids or young adults are focusing on food about 110% of their time. You can ask them, how come 110%? It's about this extra 10% that they actually think about food while they sleep. So the body is trying to survive, to get into survival mode, and making sure that the person is thinking about food in order for him to wake up and get the food, right? So kind of if you kind of think about it, it's such a preoccupation that it's more than kind of normal what we see now. Also, the obvious sign is losing weight and unwillingness to maintain the body weight, intense fear of gaining weight, over-exercise. We see a lot of those individuals in the gyms, probably there for hours and hours, and they don't want to leave. We hear about vomiting during or after a meal, and one sort of a good thing, while during the COVID epidemic, we see kids or young adults more often, they're at home now. So possibly parents are able to see those signs a bit more, maybe understand them a bit faster, and maybe get to doctor office a bit faster. However, we definitely know that there is a hidden signs, and I'm so glad that you posed that question. One of the things that I want you to understand, that eating disorder can happen at any size. So if you look around, you will never know who has an eating disorder or not. We kind of think that, this very skinny, bony looking female, I think that's the kind of a way we view eating disorders. However, anyone can have an eating disorder at any size and any gender. It's more prevalent in girls and young teens. However, we see that we see boys having an eating disorder, and also what we tend to see now, that kids as young as 6 or 8 years old are developing eating disorder. Sometimes what the kid or young adult can develop is the low blood pressure, and what it means that they may be starting to faint. And when they go to the physician's office, they may not be able to even identify, even the doctors. However, if you know that it possibly could be a sign of an eating disorder, you may be questioning that at the doctor's office. Also, eating in secret, that's a kind of a sign that something is brewing, something is going on. Going to the washrooms during or after meals, this is the time when the vomiting may start. However, parents or students or peers or teachers may not attribute that to anything, right? But if you kind of think about it, it may be a sign of an eating disorder, maybe just to watch for that. Being tired, being cold, even though in summertime, sometimes a lot of individuals with eating disorders, they might feel very cold and put more sweaters on, just because they're not eating enough to take care of their body heat. They can be agitated, moody. They have strict rules with eating. So they're very inflexible. They may be eating certain products and they're not going to be able to, not willing to eat any other products or any other packages of food, specific company of food that they will be going for and not any others. Eating very slowly, cutting in very small pieces, or eating too fast. So these are the signs for These are the hidden signs. Going to the third question, how can the parent have a conversation? So I think in order to answer that question, we need to go back to the parent or a teacher themselves. We know that the kids, they learn through modeling. And they want to know how you doing with your food choices. They want to know how you are accepting, whether you're accepting your body or not. I always say that we don't have now obesity epidemic. We actually have an epidemic of body mistrust and non-acceptance epidemic. So many of us, we see a lot of media posts. We're on Instagram, on Facebook. We see a lot of this on media saying that your body is not good and that you need to change your body towards that one particular body shape. However, if you can, I'm not going to show it here just because of the time, but if you look at on YouTube, it's called Poodle Science video. It shows that people are just different kinds of dogs. They can be poodles or they can be mastiffs. And the mastiff, if we're trying to make a poodle into a mastiff, it's not going to be a healthy poodle. If we're trying to make a mastiff into a poodle, it's not going to be a healthy mastiff. So we need to make sure that we understand what our body is and what our body shape is. And the most important thing is how we talk about our bodies. This way, the kids will hear how we talk, and they will model their attitudes towards their own bodies. So if we talk about and constantly criticize our bodies and saying that, you know, I'm too fat or I have to go on the diet, the kids will pick up whether they're in the classroom or they're in schools. And this is why I urge you to think about how you talk about your body, what you do at home, in the classroom as a student as well. And what do you think your kids in the classroom or kids at school or at home, what messages are they picking up from you? And what we trying to model to our kids, that everybody is a good body, and that we don't want them to go on the diets, because we know that diets never work, and all they do is making our perception that our body is not good. So this is why I think to answer this question is looking back at yourself and thinking, how do you talk to yourself? How do you talk about yourself? And this way, your kids at school, your kids at home will pick up whether the message, a positive message, if your message is positive towards your own body. I'm very mindful of time, so I'm just gonna stop here. Hopefully I answered your questions.
Great. Thank you, Anna. In the resource sheet that Brandon mentioned, we'll be sure to include some resources that Anna passed along for us for eating disorders. So we'll actually move into the last general question here, which actually ties really well into a lot of the audience questions that we've been getting surrounding support. So what are some ways to ensure that children maintain a good support system during a pandemic? What are resources and support available to parents, children, and educators who are seeking help? I know a bunch of you have touched on various resources available and pass them along to us to include them in the resource sheet after the event. So if you want to hit on any highlights quickly, that's much appreciated. And we'll start with Deanna.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to reiterate, Laura did a really excellent explanation of what school mental health resources can look like. And those should be available and consistent across all school boards and across schools. That's our goal. So hopefully some of the support that students are seeking, they can get at school from those caring adults, from their teacher, whether they're in the brick school or whether they're in the virtual school. Hopefully all those resources are there for helping them, support them, and connect them to the support that they might need. But as a parent, you also want to think about how important your connection is, and spending some one-on-one time with your child regularly, whether it's your young child or your teen, setting some time aside for a fun activity, or just to go for a walk with the dog, or cook together, whatever it might be. So important that you spend that time talking and listening to really what's going on in their life. And that's a huge support when your child knows that they can come to you and talk to you. Another option might be to think about, if you have more than one child, what are the opportunities for siblings to spend time together? During the pandemic, our family circles have gotten pretty tight. We don't have a lot of people over. We're not socializing with a lot of people outside of our house. So what's the opportunity for your family members to engage? Play games together, even if it's watching movies together, or turning off all the electronic devices and finding some shared fun activities to do together. Because often siblings will talk to each other and support each other in a way that kids don't go to their parents and talk about the things that they're worried about. So that's really important as well. Another thing you might want to do, whether you're a teacher or a parent, or ask the young people in your life, who are the caring adults in their life that they can talk to? Can every child at least name one person that if they're worried or upset about something, they have someone that they know that can support them? And during the pandemic, we're going to have to be creative and find ways with social distancing or virtually that we can make sure our children are connecting with the supports that they need. The second part of that question was around, what supports are available. Whether you're a parent or a teacher or a professional or a student, I would suggest you go to the school mental health website, check out the great resources that have been developed there by experts in the field, by psychologists, by social workers working in school that are really focused, and by our students themselves, to really tailor to each audience. So when you go onto the School Mental Health Ontario website, you'll be able to quickly identify your audience resources and click right on for parents to learn more about how you can support your child, to learn more about mental health and those warning signs and how to support, as well as for a teacher, the things you can do in your classroom. And also there's opportunities for educators to go deeper and do some more concentrated learning about mental health and mental health problems, and great accommodations of how we help students in the classroom and how we get them support when they need it. And for the student themselves, there's lots of self-care, lots of good resources for everyday mental health practices, which are so important. So again, we'll provide those resources for you. So I just encourage you to go and take a look at the plethora of information there is. And I know that some of my panelists will talk about more specifically who you can reach out to for help.
All right, great. Thanks, Deanna. Laura, did you want to go next?
Sure. So to piggyback on the information that Deanna provided in terms of maintaining a good support system, I think just keeping a routine is so important. And so making sure that you are coming together for dinner, or, that you've got time without devices before everybody gets ready for bed, just all of those sort of normal practices that were part of your family and part of your life before the pandemic really help in terms of making kids feel safe, making them feel secure, and having those safe and predictable routines are really, really valuable, especially for our little kids, but for teens as well, right? They still really, as much as they might say they don't, thrive when there is structure and predictability, and they're able to maintain a good connection with someone in the home. And then in terms of resources, I know there's been a lot of resources that have been discussed tonight, but for those parents or educators that are local to the KFLNA community and to the Limestone Board, I just wanted to reiterate that if you are concerned about your child, the best thing to do is to reach out to the school administrator, so the principal in the building where your child attends, and they can help connect you with support or connect your child and youth with support. And there are various ways that looks within elementary and secondary. You can also access 211. And so 211 is either a website or a telephone line, depending on what way works best for you. It's essentially a directory of community supports across Ontario. And so you would just type in 211 to your internet browser, for example. You could put in children's mental health, and all of the different services within KFLNA will come up. So That is a great resource that the United Way is really helping to promote and support in our community. And I also just wanted to remind parents that if you are connected to a family physician, your family physician may be part of a larger family health team. And often within family health teams, there are access to social workers, to dietitians, to psychologists, a variety of different people that are able to support you, that are able to support your child. And it's often easier to access the services within your family health team than it is sometimes within our larger community mental health agencies, because we know that sometimes wait times are quite long, and we have children that need support a little bit sooner. So don't forget to ask your family doctor, if you are connected with one, about supports that might be available. And then for our educators in the audience, again, as Deanna had said, there's lots of great information on the School Mental Health website. If you are working as an educator in a board, never hesitate to reach out to your mental health lead if you have questions, if you need support. And then I did want to direct the educators who are watching tonight to a very specific resource, which is called Supporting Minds. Just throw it in Google, it will come up. It looks like a very cumbersome document, but Supporting Minds is designed specifically for educators, and it focuses on the main mental health issues that you see amongst students. Things like anxiety, eating disorders, mood disorders, addiction, self-harm, and gives you some really manageable ways and actionable things that you can do within the classroom to help support students. And if you go on the School Mental Health website, you'll see a condensed version of that resource that might be a little bit more palatable. It's called Classroom Strategies for Supporting Students with Mental Health Concerns.
Great, thanks, Laura. And we'll be sure to put those resources in our resources brief at the end. Anna, did you want to speak on this a little bit?
Sure. Not to repeat the speakers, I think I want to reiterate the importance of family physician, that he or she may play a great role in actually accessing the resources that you may not be aware of. They may be more aware of all the resources that's available. Also, I can't stress enough the self-care of the whole family, because if somebody is in the family struggling with mental health, the whole family is affected. So I think that it's very important for the whole family to make sure that they are taking care of each of them, and also just like previous speakers were talking about, that make sure you take time to spend time together with the family. Maybe play board games, maybe take time and go for a walk. It's getting cold, maybe, you know, put some warm clothes and still go for a walk. Chat with your parents or with your children, and just make sure you connect, because when we are disconnecting, that's when you know, mental health may get worse. So that's why just make sure you connected with each other in the family is very important.
Great, and last but certainly not least, we'll move on to Melanie.
Thanks, Matt. I think everyone already shared some pretty awesome ideas, but some tips that I can think of about how to help children maintain a good support system is to, of course, host virtual gatherings with friends and family for quality time over video chat or a group call, and to also find something to look forward to for each day of the week, like maybe Monday's a game night, Tuesday's movie night, or Wednesday's pizza night, just to keep them looking forward to something. And of course, remember that support is always available to young people whenever they need it. So you can always encourage them to talk to someone they trust, or a resource like Kids Help Phone about whatever's going for them. And because we are an e-mental health service, it's good to know that they can actually contact us 24/7 from anywhere in Canada over phone or text message. And we also offer something called a back to school checklist during COVID-19 on our website. So that'll be also attached in the resources Matt's giving out. So that checklist can help students adjust to changes during the school year with the pandemic. And you can actually check things off that are relevant to you as you go, which is pretty cool.
All right, great. Well, I am mindful of the time, so we're going to move into the audience Q&A, and we did see some common themes around some of the questions that were asked, so I did kind of condense a few of them, and we won't go too late. Probably we'll cut it off around 9:10, 9:15. So the first one actually is we got a lot of questions specifically for Mel. But how does one become a volunteer crisis responder with Kids Help Phone? Specifically, if they need to be a counselor beforehand, and can undergraduate students get involved?
That's a great question. So I definitely assumed in my undergrad that you couldn't be a counselor or anything related to that if you didn't have a social work background or counseling or psychology background. But I actually learned that you can just be a volunteer crisis responder with just being a person who wants to listen and be there to someone in need. I thought you needed a specific toolbox, but really it can be anyone that just wants to listen, which is really awesome. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we actually had a huge wave of crisis responders apply. We actually had over 5,000 people apply, which is incredible because when I started, there were around 50 crisis responders. So that was a huge increase. And unfortunately, we are at capacity for our crisis responder volunteer opportunities right now, but we will pass along a link of how you can get involved with other volunteer opportunities. And we do have some intern positions that we're hiring for right now as well. So if you check out Kids Help Phone Careers, you can find that there.
All right, great. Thank you. So now we'll move into one kind of directed at all of the panelists. So how do you manage your own mental health, especially when working with possibly difficult topics and situations? How do you not bring your work home with you? I think this one kind of applies to a lot of our audience attending today, whether that's parents, students, teachers. I know for me specifically, working right next to the bed where I sleep isn't always the most effective thing. So would love to hear from you if we wanted to start with Deanna.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say it's going to be different for everyone. You're going to have to find what works for you. But for myself, often, over the last decade, I would often have that long drive home, which would really help me sort of shake off work before I got home. So I'd turn the tunes up, or I'd make a call and connect with a friend or one of my kids and chat on the way home and just sort of shake off work. Now it's a little bit harder now that I'm working from home. So it's great to be able to have some sort of transition activity so that you can really feel like you've left work in your home. So whether that's cooking dinner and spending time with your family together, whether it's taking the dog and going out for a walk around the block and just getting some fresh air and a change of scene can be really, really helpful. Bottom line, make sure that you have someone you can talk to. So if something, is overwhelming at work, or there's a huge stressor or a student or a child you're concerned about, always good to have someone to talk it through with. That always helps.
Great, thank you. Laura, did you want to hit on this one next?
Sure. I would say the thing for me, and it's been a really difficult thing, has just been around setting boundaries and being able to say no to things. I think probably lots of us on this call are going down a career path because we're really interested in helping children and youth and supporting children and youth mental health. Or as a parent, we try to juggle so many different hats between our career and being a partner and a parent, and there's lots of competing demands for time. And so I think giving yourself permission to say no to things sometimes is a really hard skill to learn because it causes a bit of discomfort sometimes, but it is really important for us to be able to say no to the things that we know aren't going to contribute to our own well-being, are really going to impact our ability to be present, to do our best. And I think that's just something that comes with time, it comes with practice, and you really have to get to a place where you are comfortable to give yourself that grace, and know that if you say no, that's okay. And there will be other opportunities, there will be other things that you will be able to say yes to. But that is something that I have learned for myself that is really important just in looking after my own wellness. As much as I want to stretch myself and support everyone and everything, there are just times when I can't, and that's okay.
Great, thank you. And Anna?
I think it's so important to understand that whatever works, and it's what works is for everybody is different. For me, let's say, I know that if I'm stressed or if I need to shake something off, I'll take my 2 dogs and go for a walk. I'll put my earphones and I'll probably listen to either music or an audiobook. For somebody else, it's going to be very different. I think what's most important is to acknowledge that you are either getting overstressed or you need to talk to somebody. And I think this piece of acknowledgement, sometimes we forget. We tend to do more and more and more. And just like Laura said, we tend to not say no to things. And just acknowledgement that you probably is getting overwhelmed, or you need the time off, or you need this walk, is very important. I think that's what I would suggest for our guests, to kind of attune to yourself and kind of think, when is this the time when you're saying to yourself, hey, I need this time off to myself. Thank you.
Great. And Melanie, last but not least.
Thanks. I definitely echo what everyone else has said about self-care. I thought it might be helpful to talk about mental health in the context of being a mental health professional. I know when I first started volunteering with Kids Help Phone, seeing the word suicide would make my stomach turn and I wouldn't know what to say. And the reality is it's not easy. Like when you're talking about these difficult topics and situations, it's natural to feel uneasy. And especially in the pandemic right now for mental health professionals, it's tough. We're all dealing with uncertainty right now. And it's difficult to comfort those people when you're having the same concerns at home. You might have a family member at home that's unfortunately sick with COVID-19 or dealing with financial or job stress. So it's definitely hard to manage. But I would say what's important to me is just thinking about my thinking brain and my feeling brain. Because if I'm doing crisis response, let's say I'm dealing with someone who's in a mental health crisis, if I let my feelings take over and I join in their distress, like I'm definitely an empath. So I like feel when other people are feeling, I'm not able to give them that same quality of care that they need. So you kind of need to separate those two brains and say, okay, right now I'm going to focus on thinking and how to give that best support. And after, I'm going to focus on self-care. I'm going to reflect after. I'm going to share with people that I trust and do what I need to do to take care of myself. But it's not easy and there isn't a simple answer. Everyone really is different.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and we're going to move on to our last Q&A question of the night, just for time purposes. And so I'll say the question, and then Deanna, if you'd like to go first, feel free. Does School Mental Health Ontario also provide resources and advocates for students who are facing burnout? Many high school students are involved in extracurriculars or work, as well as attending school for 8 hours plus, completing many hours of homework, doing so. And so is School Mental Health Ontario advocating for these students in any way?
Let me get unmuted there. That's a great question. I think, again, as we think about taking care of our own mental health, we've already got some really good ideas around setting boundaries and what we can manage, but also self-care is so important. If you follow Thrive SMH for School Mental Health on Instagram, right now they have a 30-day self-care challenge, which is really important. So it's really challenging students to take one action of self-care every single day. It's so important to set aside time every single day to look after yourself. So I think that's one way students are recognizing that students do get overloaded. Work burden is pretty big. Often students are at school. They also have a part-time job and family responsibilities. So really paying attention to your own self-care, taking care of your own mental health every day. There are certain media campaigns that the students have developed around managing stress, handling anxiety. So all those would be really applicable also to burnout. So I would encourage you to go to the School Mental Health Ontario website, look under the student resources, also on the jack.org hub. There's great resources as well for students, and on the Kids Help Phone website as well under student resources and self-care. There's some really great tip sheets and resources and videos to listen to that hopefully that will help support our students.
Great, thanks, Deanna. I think it might make sense if Laura goes next on this one. I don't know if she has any insight from kind of the Limestone School District Board. If not, that's okay.
I'll be short and sweet, but just to say that if students are struggling, if they're feeling overwhelmed, if they're feeling burnt out, I really do encourage them to talk to someone in their school, whether it's a teacher, their principal, one of the mental health support staff. Often it helps just to be able to talk about what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, but it gives them the support of another adult who perhaps can give them some tips and strategies, who may be able to help advocate for them if they're struggling in school, but they can't find their voice to be able to say that. And so I just encourage students just to reach out, even if all you do is knock on someone's door and say, you know what, like today I'm not feeling myself, I'm not feeling okay. That's all you need to say, and the conversation will flow from there. So there are lots of supports. Your teachers in school want to help you in any way that they can. So please don't ever feel like it's a burden to chat with anyone within your school. They are all ready and willing and wanting to support you very, very much.
All right, great. Thank you both. So that concludes the end of our audience Q&A period. We'd like to thank all of you that attended tonight's panel, once again for engaging with Bloom. And then to our four incredible panelists, Laura, Anna, Melanie, and Deanna, we appreciate and thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with us and engaging in conversations about mental health. It was really great.
Again, so following the event, we are going to send a follow-up email, which will contain all the resources, and we will announce the winner of our draw. So to all of you who attended, we appreciate the support and hope you're able to walk away with a little new perspective on how to support those in your communities. Thank you to Bloom, the executive team, for all their hard work, effort, and dedication. We appreciate you. Thank you all for attending.
And for more information, you can engage with our social media channels on Instagram and Facebook at Queen's Bloom, or visit our website, letsbloom.ca. Thank you to all and have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations, Bloom, on a great event.